It's all about the World Heavyweight Championship this week at UFC 260, and we are here for it. Welcome into another episode of Combat Coach, the show of record in the MMA sports betting space. I am the coach and our man, one of the best minds, if not the smartest mind in the space, Mr. Ian Parker from CBS and Sportsline. Ian, how are you?
You're making me blush. Thanks, Coach. No, I'm good. Big fight tomorrow night. Baddest man on the planet. Best heavyweight of all time against the scariest one. Let's get it going. I'm ready.
We were going to get to that main event coming up, but we break down every single fight on the card that has a line right now. We tell you how we think it's going to go, and then he'll also let you know what he's betting on today. So understand, not all these picks are what he's betting. We will make the distinction. You have to make the decisions for yourself. We do this all in 20 minutes or less, so grab your paper, grab your pencil. Here we go. First fight on the card for Saturday night. Marc-André Barriault. He's minus 125, taking on Azaltar, minus 105. The total in this, over 2.5, minus 195. The under 2.5 coming back at plus 160. These are middleweights. Now, Barriault, he lost his first three fights, in the UFC by decision. Azaltar, he's fighting for the first time since 2018, so something has to give. What do you like?
Yeah, between the two, I think what I've seen out of Barriault, I just think is, from where he came from, there was a lot of hype, but just kind of a wild fighter, not the best cardio. I think Azaltar has an opportunity to make a splash. Good style matchup for him after being out for a little while. I'll go that way.
Okay, Azaltar in fight number one. All right, fight number two, light heavyweights. And really, the landscape is really changing for this division. And it's important to win, and if you don't, you're going way to the back of the line. So this one, Modestas Bukauskas, plus 140, taking on Oleksiejczuk, minus 170. Over 2.5 is the total, plus 140. The under 2.5 coming back at minus 170. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I think King Michael or Michelle, whatever you pronounce his name. I can't even pronounce the first name, let alone you pronouncing the last name. So we're good there. We'll balance each other out. I just think that there's not going to be much of a threat of putting him on his back. We saw against OSP. That was his lack of comfort zone, to call it. But when he stands on the feet, he's very tough. He hits really hard. I think King Michael gets it done here.
All right, King Michael. All right, fight number three, Jared Gooden, plus 205 as the underdog, taking on the cousin of Khabib, Mr. Abubakar Nurmagomedov, minus 245. Both fighters, their second UFC fight, still looking for their first win. Over 2.5, minus 190. The under 2.5 coming back at plus 155. These are welterweights. What do you like?
I like Nurmagomedov here. I think if he gets this fight to the ground, which I expect to happen quickly, there's not much of a threat from Gooden off his back. We saw in that last fight, Nurmagomedov was dominating, but he was going against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. He got caught being overconfident. I don't see that happening here. Gooden's tough, can take punishment, but I think Nurmagomedov is just better everywhere and the safe play on the ground. So Nurmagomedov it is.
All right, very good. Fight number 4, Fabio Cherant, plus 220. Alonzo Menifield, minus 280. No total listed in this fight yet. These are light heavyweights. What do you like?
Yeah, there's no total because Fabio's taking this on short notice. Look, Menifield should get the win here, right? He's got the power. He's got the striking. However, we've seen some flaws in his game, mainly off his back, and that he gets tired quick. And what we've seen or heard from Fabio, even though he's a newcomer, most of his wins have come by submission. So the clear path to victory here, if Fabio can get this fight to the ground, and he can take this into the second round if he needs to, he can get the win here. So I'm okay with this being our underdog play for the night if you want to sprinkle a little something. Plus 220 when a guy has that much of an advantage somewhere in a fight, I'm willing to take a shot, and I will on Fabio Cherant.
All right, and remember, when we say sprinkle, what translation means a little bit less than what your normal bet would be. All right, so that's what we mean when we say sprinkle. All right, next fight on the card, Jamie Mullarkey, minus 105, taking on Khama Worthy, coming back at minus 125, the over 1.5, not 2.5, minus 180, the under 1.5 coming back at plus 150. These are lightweights. Worthy really kind of burst onto the scene in 2019 with his win over Devontae Smith, but since then, not the greatest. What do you like in this one?
Well, we saw that Worthy in that fight was being a huge underdog, and then coming back and beating Luis Pena the way he did, again, was an underdog. We saw him, striking really well, but what we saw out of him was the other part of his game that we didn't know he had was the submission game. Winning by guillotine was fantastic to get a real idea, but then he ran into a really tough opponent, lost in the first round. Again, kind of hard to gauge when a guy wins or loses really quickly. Jamie Mullarkey's very tough. I just think he's a little too raw. I think Worthy's experience will be a good factor in his favor. I like Khama Worthy to get it done.
All right, again, that's minus 125 according to the odds we get from my bookie, but they're going to be the same no matter what book you decide to use. All right, next fight up, the ladies. Gillian Robertson, plus 135. Miranda Maverick, minus 165 is the favorite. Over 2.5, minus 170. The under, 2.5 coming back at plus 140. These are flyweights. Originally slated to take place at UFC 258. It got moved back here to the UFC 260.
Yeah, so Gillian Robertson, very seasoned vet, great at jiu-jitsu. Stand-up is really just used to get it to the ground. I just think she's running into a true shining star, Miranda Maverick, that has that it factor. Miranda's very strong. She's got a high fight IQ. And if she can keep this fight standing, which I think she can, she's going to have a really good advantage here. And I think this is a huge name to get on her resume this early in her career. So I'm going to go with Miranda Maverick.
Real quick, because I know a lot of the articles that I read in preparing for the show is that there's a lot of hype and there's a lot. She's a hot prospect. Would this be a position, since you're laying 165 anyway, that you'd want people to get in early because it could go up to 180 or 190 potentially?
Yeah, you know what? In this situation, it really can. Look, a lot of people may feel that Gillian Robertson may give her that whole seasoned veteran to newcomer lesson where I'm going to pull you to the ground and show you that just because you're a blue chip, it doesn't mean that you know what it's like to be in the cage. I just don't see it happening here. Robertson's fighting out her UFC contract, doesn't know if she's going to get re-signed, and she's running into a juggernaut in Maverick. So, yes, I do agree with you. I would get in early now because once they watch the weigh-ins and see her physique and see the type of demeanor she has, that might shoot up to 180.
An absolute killer she is. All right, next fight, and we're deep into the main card. This is, normally we've seen 13 to 15 fight cards recently, but when you have a UFC pay-per-view, they like to limit it, but this is really limited because of the fights that were canceled earlier in the week. So, Thomas Almeida, plus 255, taking on what was one of the bright, young, shining stars. He had swagger. He had confidence in spades. And that's Sugar Sean O'Malley, minus 330. But his last fight, we know he got injured. He was incredibly cocky. He was basically shown the door. Over 1.5, minus 140. The under 1.5 here, plus 110. How do you think Sugar Sean will respond after that, what I thought was a devastating loss early on in his career?
I think he responds well. I think he kind of has that mentality where he belongs in the fight game, and he's someone that's kind of just breathes this air. And a guy in Almeida, just ever since he got knocked out by Cody Garbrandt, just has never changed up his game, never done anything different to get better or improve. And you've seen that in his results where he just keeps losing. I don't see him taking O'Malley down, and if he does, O'Malley has very good jiu-jitsu. I just think O'Malley is going to be hungrier than ever. I think he wants to prove that he's still that prospect, and everyone believes that he is. And I still think he has that behind him. I think he ate a big piece of humble pie in that last one with the cockiness, but I do think he gets it done here. And for this type of fight, though, you got to throw it in a parlay. Minus 330 is just way too much to do it straight.
The question, how good is this guy really? That's going to be the question asked from Monday until Saturday when Sugar Sean enters the octagon. This next fight, we have the same type of questions that we're asking for Tyron Woodley, coming in plus 205. And 2 years ago, this man was on top of the division. 2 years later, he has gotten beaten badly 3 times in a row. He's taking on a guy doing this in Vicente Luque, who comes in at minus 245, over 2.5, minus 150, under 2.5, plus 120. Obviously, these are welterweights. How bad does Tyron Woodley really want to fight?
He says he does, and he has all the skills to still be that top guy. He's got a power, overhand right. He still has good wrestling. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't use the wrestling. When he was dominant, he used that striking to set up his wrestling and get it to the ground. Now he just stands, and he's very hesitant with his striking. His cardio is definitely taking a little bit of a dip. And Vicente Luque is the opposite, from a guy that kind of came in, was finishing people, got in a few brawls. And in his last fight, he tightened up his game. He became a elusive striker, very technical, very smart with it, took less damage. He's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He could take the fight to the floor. And we've seen his cardio, and I think it's way better than Woodley's. I think this is the time where Luque gets it done and gets a name like Woodley on his resume, which gets him into probably that top 5 area. As much as I love Tyron, I think he's a great talent. I just think that maybe it's time to sail off into the sunset, and I think it's to put another star over, and I think Luque is that guy. So I'm going Vicente Luque. You could throw him into that parlay with Sugar Sean O'Malley.
We saw that with Frankie Edgar, that clearly one fight too many recently. I think Tyron Woodley, this could be one fight too many for what is going to be potentially a Hall of Fame career. All right, we have come to our main event of the evening. And whenever the world heavyweight title in any sport is on the line, people pay attention. But I got to believe, and first I'll give you the odds. Stipe Miocic, he's the champion. He won it back from Daniel Cormier, plus 105. Francis Ngannou, the scariest human being on planet Earth until he leaves the octagon. Then he's the sweetest human being, minus 135. Over 1.5 here, minus 140. Interesting, because this is a 5-round championship fight. The under 1.5 at plus 110. Obviously, heavyweights. It's clear here, Ian, that the UFC wants Francis Ngannou to win. And the reason I say that is because Stipe just doesn't fight enough. And if Francis, who is 100% into this sport, if he wins, then you could get this defended 2 or 3 times in a year. What do you think is going to happen in our main event?
This is a tough one, man. It really just comes down to, can Francis get the knockout early? Because if he doesn't, I don't see him beating Stipe in that way. I know everyone says, oh, he's an animal, he's this, he's that, but since their last fight, what have we seen? Everything we saw prior to that, where he gets quick knockouts. He kind of throws punches at, the one against Jairzinho Rosenstrike. He ran at Rosenstrike with reckless abandon, but he was able to do that because Rosenstrike doesn't have a wrestling game to threaten that, or really he's a counter striker. So, Ngannou knew what he was getting himself into. If he runs at Stipe, Stipe will just do a double leg takedown and end up right into half guard, because it's not like Francis has, top tier jiu-jitsu or anything better that Stipe has seen. So in my opinion, this can very much end up like when Stipe fought Alistair Overeem, where he weathered a storm early on, came back, got it to the floor, and Overeem does have a good game off his back. In the first fight against Francis, same thing, weathered the early storm, dragged into deep waters, uses grappling to just damage. He couldn't get the fight finished, but listen, it's Francis. That's understandable. So I think that either Francis gets it done very quickly or Stipe takes the distance. And in this situation, I will go Stipe Miocic. I also really like over 1.5 rounds. Stipe, all of his fights have gone pretty far in recent. Yeah, to your point, he's not the most active fighter. That tends to happen with heavyweight championships, though, and he's just not that guy that finishes fights very quickly. So in that situation, I like Stipe to make it out of the first round to win. If he's going to do it, we got some long shot plays I want to throw out there to the fans out there, okay? I do like if Stipe is to win by decision, which he's done before, and he can do, plus 400. That's a really nice play. If you want to take it a step further, and you've seen what Stipe does when he gets on top of people, especially with Overeem, even when he knocked down Cormier, the TKO is possible. Is he going to floor Francis from the standing position? No, I don't think so. But if he gets into the guard and he's standing above him, or if he gets in the half guard and drops elbows, Stipe winning by KO or TKO in round 3 is plus 1,400. That's a good time where Stipe's cardio takes over and where Francis starts to fade. So we haven't seen Francis do a 5-rounder in a very long time. We've seen Stipe go into championship rounds quite often. So that's where I'm at with Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou.
The one thing that I do not want to see is a repeat of what Francis did against Derek Lewis, where they stood there for 15 minutes and literally did nothing. Before I get to the recap, real quick, we do have some UFC news that came down earlier on Friday. And this is what I love about social media, is that when Dana White and the UFC announced that they were going to go to Florida, to Jacksonville, to where they could have an entire arena. Oh, it's crazy. It's too early. Guess what? You don't have to go. But guess what, Ian? There's a whole bunch of people that do want to go, and that event sold out like that. It's going to be over 15,000 people in Jacksonville for USMAN, and help me out here. Thank you, Masvidal, in the main event that particular night. That shows me that the American people are ready to get back out there. They're not scared to go an event with somebody sitting next to them. How much do you think the hype and the excitement is going to be in that building, the first building that's going to be full in over a year?
Look, they're loading up that card. They got 3 title fights. 2 title fights now. One of them was canceled. But, look, the fans are ready. They're going to blow the roof off the place, and you got a good main event to do it. Masvidal is going to come out there with a full camp. Usman's, they don't like each other, so obviously they have the rivalry, and Usman's trying to prove to the world that he is going to surpass George St. Pierre and become the GOAT of the welterweight division. So, for that type of main event, it deserves a full house, and we're going to see it.
I am here for it. Can't wait. Of course, that's going to be on pay-per-view later on in April. Okay, here we go. Grab your paper, grab your pencils. Time for the recap of every single pick that Ian just gave you. Let's start with that first fight. He likes Azaltar. That's minus 105 to win the first fight. Then in the second one, Miocic. I knew I'd butcher it the second time. He likes them minus 170 for that fight. Third fight, Nurmagomedov minus 245. By the way, would you put Nurmagomedov in a parlay, or do you not mind laying the 245?
I actually don't mind laying the 245 in this fight because stylistically this is really solid. But, for those out there that may not feel comfortable, yeah, you could throw them in the parlay with O'Malley and Luque or just one of them, if you feel more comfortable. Absolutely.
Okay, our next fight is our upset pick of the show. That's going to be Fabio plus 220 to upset Alonzo Menifield as far as the numbers are concerned. But one thing that we've seen in 2021, there's been a lot of long, odd underdogs that have come through, especially early on in the card, it seems like. I don't know what the reason is for it, but we've seen a lot. So at plus 220, that's a nice return on your investment. $100 will bring you 220 there. Also, you like the under there a little bit, or no? Because there's no total yet there. So
no, I actually don't, only because if Menifield doesn't get the knockout early, Cherant's been known to go to decision or submission after the second round.
Very good. I don't know why I wrote the under down there. My apologies.
You're good.
Next fight, Jamie Mullarkey, minus 105, taking on Worthy. You like Worthy in this fight as well. Next fight with the ladies, Maverick. She's a rising star, minus 165. Get the play in right now. This is only going to go up. This is not going to come down over the course of the next 24 hours before the start of this card. Then Sugar Sean O'Malley, put him in a parlay because he's minus 330. Those odds are way too much to lay, especially when you factor in what had happened to him the last time. And you don't want him to get caught again. So I'm going to go in. I like your parlay idea, but I'm a little bit trepidatious because of how cocky he was the last fight, how confident he was the last fight, and he got dominated. So I want to see something from him before I bet on him outright. In our main event, or co-main event rather, you like Vicente Luque minus 245 over Tyron Woodley. I don't think this is going to be much of a fight at all. I don't mind laying the 245 based off what I've seen from Tyron Woodley the last 18 months or so. And then in our main event, Ian, you like Stipe. You like the over. And then for those that want some longer odds, some plus odds, you don't mind potentially a decision or a little bit on a KO or a knockout TKO in the round 3, which comes back at plus 1,400. I can't wait for this card. I cannot wait for this card. Be sure to follow Ian Parker MMA on social media at The Coach Rules on Twitter and Instagram as well. We'll be updating things throughout the day. If we see something we don't like, we'll tell you to come off of a play as well. We also have a special episode of The Early Edge on our Sportsline YouTube page where Ian gives us his best bets for the entire day. So you want to go over and watch that episode as well. It's only like 7 minutes. We do it as fast as possible. All right, that's going to do it. Get set for UFC 260 for Ian Parker, MMA, for Cody Mera, our incredible producer. I am the coach. Remember, every single week, there's an MMA card, UFC, Bellator, PFL. We're here for you on Combat Coach. Good luck.